Okay, so we'll do a quick walk around here. The B1, right?
Yeah.
First one, or well, maybe the second one.
Yeah.
Versus the 2222. What's changed? If you can pull off some old memories.
Mostly little things. Mostly this kind of design change where the chains used to hang down below the deck, and we just, you know, use bigger tubes in the chain or inside the tubes. And we've added a stiff leg up front. We've, you know, talked about years past adding one over there. The location of the clamp and those kind of things. The way it works, when we first started out, we didn't use the air. We used, it was hydraulics. So you had to have all these, they would call them sequencing valves. We just used pressure reliefs. So the clamp would come clear down. The saw would turn on mechanically it'd come off a lever, and then it would cut, and then you'd pull a lever and the saw would go all the way back up. And then the clamp, it was same process, but it was much slower because the absence of air.
And so, yeah, by adding the air compressor and the tank, and it's kind of a separate two-stage or two-chamber tank.
Yep.
We're now able to speed things up with your cylinder retract, splitting cylinder retract, and that also adds a little bit of automation to it.
It does,
as well, right? Yeah. Also on the saw motor retract. So as soon as you let go of that handle, it returns to neutral. That saw is going to automatically retract. So we're picking up some speed, some automation by having that air system on there.
And see, and I know electronics things are a lot better than they used to be. When I was 18 years old, my father was so nice, he built a sawmill for me to run. First sawmill that
what a guy.
I was ever in. Yeah, what a guy. And so all this electric over hydraulic, and every time we had trouble, it was some wire, it was some solenoid, it was always the electric. And so when we started doing this, we're like, you know, we don't want to use any electric, because that always was the weak point. You know, now I know things are different, but still not to have any of that, you know, you still see that a lot in modern vehicles and modern equipment. You know, if you have a problem, most of the time it's something electronic, something electrical. And so to stay away from that was huge for us.
Yeah.
And it was still automatic. Saw goes back and shuts off. The splitting cylinder returns. Everything goes back to start position, and you don't have to do anything.
And looking at a few gauges, you can pretty quickly diagnose what problems you have.
Yep.
And that's still something that we're using today.
Real good at,
keeping things simple. The cab, that was probably not on your first B1.
No, we didn't even put a seat on the first one.
So that's been an addition over the years. It's an optional cab, and heat and air conditioning now, and a lot of the creature comforts. Crazy.
Never thought I'd see that. You know, seriously, never. We used to tell them, if you want to sit down, you probably shouldn't be in the firewood business, you know. and so, you know, it was, I don't know, but, you know, and I get it. Now you can do it in climate weather, and you can, because like owners have told me, well, the guy running the loader he's got a cab and heat and air, but this guy's supposed to stay outside. So all makes sense, you know.
It happens. Yeah. It's nice for sure. Splitting heads, wedges. Did you guys start out with a 4-way and 8-way?
No, we started out with 6 ways and 8 ways, and they bolted down like everybody else did. You know, that idea was always there. And so we were the first company to make a floating head, We were the first company to introduce air. We were the first company to do direct drop. We were the first company in the US to start making little machines. We were first in a lot of things, in the air system and so on. And that floating head, and we used to get teased about that. Now everybody's got a floating head. We were the first ones to do it. Just something simple like a clean out grate. You know, we always felt like we were first in a lot of things, just because the background. I know what it's like to cut up logs with a chainsaw and bust them with a splitting maul. So you kind of learn, you know, this would work better in the sawmill background and those kind of things. It just helps you understand what works and what doesn't, you know.
That floating head is something that I think everyone or most people are now on board and understand that. But that is a very beneficial thing to have when you lock something in or force it into a fixed position and you're running imperfect products, wood through it, knots and crotches and everything, and you're creating a lot of force on there. And if you're bolting something down rigidly, something's going to give at some point in time, and it's better for that head to walk up and down a little bit and not really jam. Or if something does plug up or jam, usually you can still adjust it up or down, and
you'll even watch it in decent, kind of nice logs. That head a lot of times will move just a little bit. That's taking that friction. I've always said, whenever you drop a piece of wood in that splitter chamber, you're trying to break something, and hopefully it's just the wood, because you're gonna break something, and you got to make that last. And so everything moves and flexes, and to us that head start, because we had fixed heads, and you just bent the blades all the time. It was really different. And then to try to adjust the piece in the head, you had to make something else move in the tray or something, and it was complicated. And this just seemed to be a lot better fit,
I'm sure over the years, people weren't looking for that, I'm going to call it the fancy firewood that a lot of customers are looking for now, especially in the bigger cities and stuff like that. They're wanting the pieces. I've heard the term that the grandma can pick up, right? And so before, I'm sure it was probably a lot of big boiler wood pieces. And
it was different. They didn't mind so much. Even if they had to make it smaller, you didn't hear a lot back about that,
Splitting a small chunk versus
well, then and that was one thing nice about the machines, is that and we started out just building a big machine, but that's what we started with, and you could still resplit wood with the machine, and that's what a lot of guys did. But the smaller woods really become a thing now,
And that's another thing that I've heard from a lot of customers: accessibility on the whole Blockbuster product line, being able to access the splitting chamber, being able to resplit easily, or if a round doesn't fall in properly, just the ease of access, and the machine keeping everything as low as possible, even logs in the trough or on the live deck. Just accessibility to everything is huge, and I hear that a lot, that's what people really enjoy and like about Blockbuster, and they may not really understand that until they go and use a different machine.
Yes, that's very true. I mean, that came from a necessity more than. We weren't trying to just dream up something to build to sell. We were building something for ourselves. We didn't have any place to go to get parts. That's why when we can say they're off the shelf parts, I mean, they truly, truly are, because we didn't have any place to go. We didn't have a manufacturer to go to. But even being you operated on the same side as your log deck. So if you are running it by yourself, you step out of the cab or off the platform, you get in your loader and you load the deck. You're not going around. If a log gets crooked, you do have to spin, like you say, accessibility to everything. Because I don't care whose machine you have, those pieces aren't all going in that tray right. Every now and then you're gonna have to, and if it's easy to get to, it's not a problem. But if it's not, now it's a problem. And so with these, you don't notice that, because it's just a quick fix and you're back to work. And
there's a lot more to speed than just fast cutting, fast splitting. There really is. And when you start to talk about efficiencies and speed, easy access where you don't have to get out and walk around, or you can make that adjustment on the fly without shutting down the operation. I think that's another thing that some people, don't get me wrong, cylinder speed and cutting speed is very important, but if you look at the average day and where your downtime really comes in, there's probably a lot more time lost on an inefficient machine setup than there is on cutting and splitting speed.
That's very well said, because like you say, it's just not how fast the cylinder goes out and back or how fast it cuts it off. It's the whole process. And if you got to stop and walk around the machine to clean out a jam, or to roll a piece, and then it's a problem.
A log stuck in the trough, or there's so many variables that happen. On the live deck, one thing that I've noticed comparing some other machines, on Blockbuster's bigger machines, the live deck does not have any down legs, dead legs.
And that's another first, you know, with the first direct drop, the first auto saw tensioner, the first air machines, and the only machine that I know of that you set up with hydraulic levers. You start it and pull levers. There's nothing on the ground.
Yeah, so when your live deck comes down, you're just resting against here. And I've heard this from a number of people. They love being able to, if they're loading with a skid loader or anything, they can come in right here, load it. They don't have to worry about bending legs or anything like that. And it's just a fast and easy setup. So again, good job on some early designs.
That was just really important to us, because people, you know, I've had over the years people say, "Oh, I don't need a portable machine. I'm going to split wood in my yard." So you say, well, okay, but when that elevator is 15 foot in the air and the wood comes up to the bottom, what are you going to do? You're going to move the pile of wood, or you're going to move the machine. With this machine, you just pick the front of it up and pull it ahead.
Yeah. And
you don't have to fold the deck up. You don't have to do anything. You just pick it up. You could literally drive down the road and split wood with this machine.
Yeah. And if you do need to move it, your down jacks, lift them up right here,
pick them up,
pull it ahead.
We always picked them up, run around the skid steer, pulled it ahead, and back to work. You could move this machine ahead, and some guys take it then and they pull it clear out, knock all the clear out, then they take and they clear the shot, back it back up, because our elevators hooked to our machines. Nobody else seems to be doing that. And it just, that's when you really need a portable machine, is when you're set up in a yard and you're making piles of wood, because you might move that machine 3 or 4 times a day.
Yep. Just talking with a customer, and they have the radial stack option, so they're swinging it out, making huge stacks, and they will move that 3 or 4 times a day.
Yeah.
And
if that takes you an hour instead of 15 minutes, that really adds up in a day.
It does.
You got all these legs to move and adjust, and it can be huge. So, yeah, that's one of the things I love about this machine. Is this is the laziest man's machine. You start it up and pull levers and you're set up. I mean, not even a pin to put in, you know? So I've always loved that about it, you know?
I've never even thought about, not even a pin. It's
no tools, nothing.
Fired up and pull some levers. Elevators, conveyors, everyone calls them something different. There's elevators, conveyors, stackers.
Yeah.
When did you guys start making?
It was real soon after the processors, because we, the first one we built was an old corn elevator, and we made, you know, a lot of changes to it so it would work and quit busting. And we decided it'd be easier to build a whole elevator than was to make it work right.
Make the corn elevator work.
Yeah.
They look very similar. Yeah. And a lot of people think that they can modify it, and some are successful at doing that, but firewood is very different from corn.
Yeah.
Base plate thickness and even the paddles. And
well, the key thing is pulling it from the top, the chain, you know, and that's what corn elevators do. Because they're PTO, they push the chain. You got to run it so tight. So then that was one of the first things we learned. Well, we put the motor up there, and so the elevators were very important right off, just simply because the machine was producing so much wood. You know, what do you do with it? Yeah. And you could make a pile about, 3 or 4 foot high, and you're taking up a lot of space quick, you know?
Yeah, that's when I'm talking with customers, if they're not even considering an elevator or conveyor, I say you need to, if we're going to be producing any sort of firewood, if you're going to be running for more than an hour at a time, be thinking about it, be planning for it, because it's going to be a necessity, and maybe not right away. Some guys will put loader buckets behind, but it's inefficient, but that also works for some people.
Well, I've always said most people don't understand this, but their first step from a log splitter should be an elevator, maybe before a processor, because you're just handling that wood so much, and then it's laying on the ground and you got to pick it up and throw it again, where at least when you got done, it'd be away from you in a pile.
Yeah, that's very true. And dual chain setups, metal paddles, never gone to the belt method? Or
No, we over the years have made some belt conveyors, and that's always a difference to me. An elevator elevates, a conveyor conveys. And we've made conveyors for people that do a lot
we're gonna start, sorry to interrupt, but we're gonna start an online controversial statement here, but this is good. So tell us what everyone thinks about elevators and conveyors. Keep going, sorry.
So the conveyors we built, they were built to feed into packaging systems. So they wanted the wood more evenly, and that's understandable because like your paddles are spaced, so you get some wood and then you get some more wood, where the belt would bring it up a lot more evenly across the belt, where you weren't just getting a pile at a time, because these were automated machines we built them for. So and that worked good. You know, we were
for
just
your horizontal movement.
Yes, yep.
But not for an elevator.
No, we've never done it to elevate the wood. No.
Major reasons why?
Well, because we found that the belts, and again, tub grinders, things like that we were always around, and they use belts. They have to. There's always a lot of issues with belts in the wintertime. Wood coming off the machine, pounding on that belt, pushing it off one way or another. One of the reasons we've always noticed this too is because people will buy our machines and they'll use a belt elevator they have. And then when they start putting that kind of volume on that little belt elevator, it really starts having issues. The belts, these guys will tell you, these belts will wintertime and you get snow and it gets cold and you turn it on and it doesn't even move. The belt is just like
frozen down,
frozen rope, it won't. And, the old chain, you just, away you go.
Yeah, if they are frozen, you lift them up, drop them down, they're broken loose, and
go around with a rubber mallet and pound on it a bit, and away you go. And there's no getting out of line and that kind of stuff with them, and wearing and no sliding down. I've been at trade shows and watched competitions, rubber belt elevator, and a piece of wood slide all the way back down to the, especially when it gets cold.
Yeah.
So now I know they're putting grips but I don't see the benefit, especially in the cost and then in the longevity of it. These things run forever.
Yeah, they don't hardly ever come up on the used market.
Yeah.
They don't. They do seem to work, and this is a piece to help improve efficiency. And
yes,
if your piece that's trying to improve efficiency is breaking down, or you're needing to work on it, or if it's not even working, that's just horrible. So try to make it robust. And we have made a few changes on this. We have added an extra clean out underneath, but
okay.
Don't take offense to it.
No.
An extra clean out up there and some extra bracing, but again, made very few changes to the elevators. The radial stack used to be an option.
Yeah.
And we made that a standard.
Oh, nice.
And
because I think about everybody wants it.
It's nice, and if they don't want it,
don't use it.
The next person that's going to take it might want it, but it doesn't add a whole lot. So it's just one of those. Yeah. Might as well put it on there.
Yeah. No, we've built. Maybe they don't want to hear this, but we built these things. We built one that was 65 feet long and had to have a bridge over it, like truss, And then it had wheels that came down on stiff legs, hydraulically powered, so it would power radial stack back and forth, and build it just like this. We didn't, other than the bridge support, like a rafter on the top. But I mean, use the same orbit motor and the same kind of chain. And
65 foot, huh?
Yep.
Well, that might not be available right now, but maybe if someone needs one, maybe we can call you back. And
it's just nice to know that those components will stand a lot more than what you're putting to them right now.
Sure. So this is a 30 foot, and then 20s, 30s, 40s has been kind of the standard. And it seems like majority of the people that I've talked to that have 20 footers wishes they would have gotten a 30 foot.
Yeah.
There are a few circumstances where your wood yard's small and they want that kind of compactness, but that 30 footer seems to be a very popular size, especially if you're going to load up into any type of a dump truck with any kind of sidewall height at all. That the 30 footers are
Yep.
just a really nice.
Because they'll go 15 foot, and so you can load a semi dump. And I get why some people want 40 footers, but sometimes you worry if you're just piling wood that tall, because you're talking 18 to 20 foot with a 40 footer, you know, it's going to hinder its drying and everything too, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, there again, like you say, somebody might be cramped on space and need the taller pad, you know, and so on.
That's another thing I've learned in my 1 year so far is everyone's situation, scenario, wood yard, everyone's different. And as much as you try to make everyone happy, it's almost impossible.
It is.
But you've done a great job with, I guess, making it user-friendly enough and adjustable enough, and even making just small tweaks and changes can really.
Well, sometimes, sometimes you can do that for a customer that it doesn't change much. They want some little thing tweaked or moved or put in a different place, and it's sometimes easy. It's customizing to a point, but not to the point where you have to just. And we have got into that over the years, and we kind of tried to get away from it. You know, building left-hand machines and right-hand machines, and electric machines are easy, but pretty soon you got to be careful. You just become such a custom shop that it's hard to.
And that's makes it harder to service everyone.
Yes.
You know, right? When you start having these one-offs, right and left-handed machine, usually the same components, but there's always some differences. But when you start talking major engine package changes or major hydraulics or electronic changes, some of the serviceability, and that's sometimes not a great move to do. And
well, 10 years down the road, somebody calls you and you just might not remember.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's what happens is
that brings up another good point. I've been blown away. When we acquired Blockbuster, we got 7 or 8 filing cabinets.
Yeah.
And those filing cabinets are full of original owners, and if they've been repurchased or bought from used, it is all there.
Yeah.
There's CDs with pictures and DVDs and all of the documentation. That's blown my mind that you guys have kept up on all of that, and we can go back, and we're starting to put things in digitally, electronically.
Yeah.
But to go back and say, yep, those 3 owners,
yeah, we could
own that machine, and we'll have some data on that, but we do try to keep track, and still try to keep track.
Yeah.
Who owns the machine, where they're at, and that's been awesome.
It is neat. It's just, and you don't do that to start with so much. You do it just to keep track of the machine and what it is. But, it's neat to look back and you can see all the history of that machine. If it had 4 or 5 owners, that's all in that file. Because we've always, guys will call and say, hey, I bought so-and-so's machine. So we always had a form filled out. Now we started his name and put that in there, and then you had all these people that it went through and bought and sold.
Yeah. So if there are any existing Blockbuster owners out there that have not called us, or look for the little serial tag or nameplate, it's going to be around the engine on the frame. Give Tony or I a call and tell us what the serial number is. We'll get you in the system. Helps out if you ever do need parts or questions. We can kind of look up that machine. So reach out if you guys have not before.
And a lot of the parts have changed, but a lot of the parts that change will fit the previous part. That's what's kind of nice is like when we say that's a 4-bolt, Eaton orbit motor, it could be a 4-bolt anything. It could be 5, 6 different brands, and it'll still bolt on there.
Right.
And that's the same motor on the deck, same motor on the trough, same motor on the elevator. And we've had guys over the years that really like, I want to keep a spare motor because they're in Tatamagouche, Canada, and not New Brunswick, but I said New Zealand, but and then New Zealand, and they want to keep spare parts. And I said, well, those motors, but 5 years down the road, they still got that spare motor, but it's just nice that it's the same one, and that's kind of nice.
There's not a lot of parts that really will cause you to go down. that
Yeah.
if you don't, there's Tony was actually making a list, and this is something that we're hoping to kind of roll out when people do buy a new machine, that we can say, hey, there are people that really like to plan, and there's people that don't care, and when it breaks, they'll fix it. But
Yeah.
we'll usually send a bar, extra bar, and a couple of chains, but in a saw sprocket. But saw sprockets, bars, and chains.
Those are your biggest wear points.
Maybe a spring or something like that on some of the different control valves, but there's not a lot.
Yeah.
That hardly ever goes wrong on these
Yeah.
things, and that's
People
that's
won't
nice.
believe, because everybody's going to tell you that. People don't want to believe that, but it's so true. I mean, I got the first one we ever built, and it's just so easy to take care of. Yeah, I don't have $20,000 on it, but we've had a lot of machines come through our shop that did.
Yeah.
And more, and they're just amazing. You just, and yet sometimes they get involved. They get to be 20 years old and they've got a lot of hours on them. Sometimes you got to start putting O-rings and valve bodies, but that's the neat thing. It's all so easy.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say easy. It takes some time, but it's not like splitting wood with them all.
Yeah, change a couple of hoses
Yeah.
or seals, or go out and start doing it by
Yeah.
hand. Take your pick.
Yeah, let's fix this, or get
Yeah.
the maul back out. Nah, even the little splitter. That was the thing we always discussed: is what's worse, sitting there bucking all them 16-inch rings up, or rolling over and then running the splitter. When you were bucking up, that was the worst, and when you started splitting, that was the worst. Both sides I don't know any harder work than that goes right along with roofing and baling small square bales, and that kind of. It's just you're bent over all the time.
At the end of the day, you feel like you've done something.
Yeah.
And you have. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not much. You look at the pile of wood you got, and you're
Compared to when you're
Yeah.
running a process.
then you go out with one of these and just play around for an hour or two, and you're like, wow,
Yeah.
that was nice, And I think there again, I think we were the first ones to ever build cleaners. And when we first built them, I couldn't get anybody interested in buying them. And like I say, the disc cleaners have their place, but if you really want to clean your wood, there's not a lot of debate. You got it, Tom.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll get it started. We'll hear from everyone.